And the gavel has dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. This is WineBid's podcast about all things wine value and wine retail, well, wine auctions. And with me, I'm Jeff McGurn. With me, as always, is Paul Walker. I, of course, am on our marketing team, and Paul works wonderfully on our wine side. He is our wine auction expert. Welcome, Paul. This, of course, is our rest of the world, looking forward, what's coming into auction wine episode. So in a previous episode, we covered France. Now we're going to talk about the United States and everywhere else in the world. So I'm going to kick us right off. I saw, there was a 2013 100-acre few and far between vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon that came into auction. I just bring this up. I mean, $495. This one's kind of interesting because I feel like the price on this has just been slowly dropping on the 100-acre. 2013, great year in Napa. This one topped at $600 in 2021. Last sold for $495. Is it going to hold at $495? Is this going to come down, Paul? What do you think we're going to see happen with some of these top tier cult Napa producers?
I don't know. This is the 13.
This is the 13.
Yeah, it's great vintage, great scores. It hammered, you said 495 before, but I don't know. It might drop a little bit. I think it'll stay over $400 consistently. These wines are sought after, and that's 10 years old now. So a great Napa vintage, and I don't think it's going to drop too much.
We have a bunch of 100-acre coming into auction this week.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of 100-acre coming into auction this week. Moving on, one that I saw, I want to see if you had some more clarity around this. We have a few of these, but a 1989 to 2015 professional sommelier tasting set, 6-bottle mix lot. Have you seen these? Are you familiar with what these are?
No, I am not. What is it called again? I have no idea what you're talking about.
1989 to 2015 professional sommelier tasting set.
1989 to 2015.
Yeah, we have.
No, oh, I see. Yeah, I noticed there's quite a few of these. I actually do happen to know, and I can give you more clarity on this. I can't give out too much information because I do know this individual personally who's selling these wines. Uh-huh. And I will say that a lot of them were actually brought over, purchased in Europe and brought over, imported by the consignor or colleagues of the consignor. He was sort of in the gray market business years ago. And it's interesting because he's had quite a collection of half bottles and 750s, all from sort of specific parts of Europe. And so there's a lot of really cool wines actually in these collections, and they're in really, really great shape. So it's kind of too bad that the photos are not up yet. Apologies for that. I think it's that they were literally just added to auction. So there are quite a few of these wines grouped together, and it's a very eclectic collection, right? This one particular you're talking about, there's wines from Gaia, there's wines from Las Casas, there's Decaminate, there's Oregon Pinot Noir. It's all over the place.
That's what I was so interested. I was like, I want to see what's in these. They're all 375 milliliter, 1,095. I mean, it's a steep price for a 6-bottle lot, but it seems really like it could be very interesting. We've got an 07 Ridge Montebello coming into auction. This one I thought was really cool because, Ridge Montebello is coming to auction for under $200. I mean, you're not getting Ridge Montebello for under $200 anywhere.
Are you on the mailing list for Ridge? I thought you were. Are you? Yeah. So then, what does the current release cost? Like the 19 or whatever they're selling now?
I would have to look it up. But
it's over $200 though, right?
Yeah, I want to say it's like $245.
Okay. Yeah. So 07 for $185. I mean, I feel like, very few vintages of Ridge Montebello they're going to disappear. Not disappear, but these prices are going to disappear, right? Because a lot of stuff from, the 90s and even some of the 80s vintages were consistently actually under $100 for a long time, and then that went away a few years ago. And so now I think you're going to see these under $200 prices disappear, and 07 I would consider that to be a deal.
Yeah, that was my thought process. Like, this is a massive steal for Ridge. I mean, just Montebello is a phenomenal wine.
Yeah, and you're getting it with all this age on it. It's in perfect shape.
2019 is $245 a bottle.
There you go. So for 185. Yeah, I mean, with commission out the door, it's barely over $200. So that's great.
2019 Realm Beckstoffer Tokalon.
Yeah, there's a batch of Realm.
Ton of Realm coming into auction. This 2019 Beckstoffer Tokalon comes in at really high reviews, $285. I thought that was super interesting in the fact that we've got a lot of rum. We had a ton of Costa Brown coming.
I saw that. I
thought the one I picked out was the Gaps Crown Vineyard Pinot Noir. This was one that I had my eye on. $75 seems like a pretty good deal for a Pinot Noir from Costa Brown. And that one looks like at least for that particular bottle, doesn't seem too crazy. And then we've got 2015 Williams Salim.
Yeah.
Papera Vineyard Zinfandel. This one I thought was interesting because of $50. Normally it's Pinot Noir, Pinot Noir, Pinot Noir. Sure. I thought that the Zinfandel might be really interesting to check out. And this one actually gets good reviews and good tasting notes as well.
No, I was curious. It looked like somebody unloaded kind of their selection of Williams Salim this week, because I flagged a couple of those also. And it's fun to see the Zinfandel because you just don't see it that often. It's relatively rare. I actually flagged a couple bottles as well. There's a 2010 and 2015 Burt Williams Morning Dew Ranch, which I always look for because it's a really limited bottling that Williams Salim does. There's actually, fun fact, a Morning Dew Ranch Vineyard label, which is extremely rare, but I think the Williams Salim's version is probably more reliably, I would say, tasty. But anyway, the 2010's in for 90 and the 15's in for 60, which is, to me, is a steal, because I think on the list it's got to be over $100 now. So those two stuck out. And then there's quite a bit of not all, but many of the other labels that the winery releases every year.
Just a lot of that Williams Salim. 2016 Larkmead's Vineyard, Dr. Olma Cabernet Sauvignon. This one,
again, another unloading of Larkmead. A
ton of Larkmead coming into auction. I thought this one was really interesting, and this seems like a solid price, $110 for the 2016, and that particular bottle is really well reviewed. We had another one that was super interesting, 2018 Turley Casa Nuestra.
Right. It's so funny you mentioned that. I wanted to go back to Larkmead really quickly.
Yeah, let's go back to Larkmead, then I want to talk about Turley.
Just for the hell of it, because it's a wide span of vintages, right? And one of the earliest wines is this Firebell proprietary red, which I can't remember what the breakdown is on that, but there's a 2010 at 85, and then 2013 it's got a bid, actually it's at 66 now. Those kind of stuck out at me because I haven't seen those for a while. There's a non-vintage 125th anniversary cuvee. I would imagine it's from a single vintage. I don't know for sure. The winemaker, or the former winemaker, I should say, is a very colorful character I've known for quite a while. And Dan would be able to tell us what the makeup of that particular wine is. I think he was still making the wine at the time. And there's also mags of 13 and 14 Napa Valley Cab for 160, which I didn't think was too expensive. So anyway, I wanted to mention those guys before you went on to the Turley. But I also did see that Turley Casa Nuestra red wine. I don't know what the blend. I would imagine it's some kind of Zin.
Well, no, I've got the information for you. This is why I think it's so interesting. So 2018, it's $40. This one's super interesting because this is actually from a vineyard in Napa that plants a mix of Mediterranean varietals. So a mix of Petit Syrah, Zinfandel, Alicante, Carignan, Napa Gamay, Negrete, Mourvedre, and Rafosco, with a bit of Chenin Blanc for good measure, is what they say. But this is so this vineyard has a long history in Napa, but it's a newer vineyard to Turley. That's why I thought it was so interesting, because like we always talk about, Turley, for Zinfandel, Petit Syrah is sort of a second, but this one, which has only been around they've only been producing this one for a few years. I thought it was just fascinating to see that blend coming out of Napa, because normally you're not going to see that blend because it's not as commercially viable.
No, many of their labels are just single vineyard Zinfandels and Petit Syrah. So yeah, you don't see, sort of the kitchen sink blend that often from them. That's cool. I had no idea. I did see that. It stuck out of me, but I had no idea what the blend was. So thank you for the educational points there.
I think I might actually go bid on that one, because I'm super interested to check out, that blend. One that I knew you would be really, really interested in, because it got a #1 in Wine Spectator, was 1996 Chateau Saint Jean.
I knew you were going to bring this up. In
1999, it was #1 in Wine Spectator.
I know. And we actually talked about this, because a few weeks ago, there was a bunch of Saint-Cepage in the auction, and you were bringing it up, and I was making fun of you. I was like, oh, come on, Jeff, Saint-Cepage, this is like grocery market nonsense. But the one vintage that was conspicuously missing was the 96. It was the only one that we didn't have. And I actually just drank a bottle of this. So a little bit of hypocrisy here. I didn't actually, it was gifted to me. So, I'm just full disclosure there.
How was it?
It was all right. It was a little tired. And I think we even talked about, like, way, way, way back when I worked at the wine club in San Francisco, this wine was released. And then when the Spectator came out with the rating, it was this huge deal, and it had to be pulled off the floor. It had to be allocated to the top customers. The price went way up. It was hilarious. It was a really, really big deal. I remember that. So it's always kind of a fun memory when I look at that bottle. But yeah, it's fun to drink. I'm not saying, it's over the hill, but it was a little tired.
The tasting notes say that it's still decent and it's still got
some. Yeah, it was good. But, people were paying $150 a bottle or something. And I think, I don't know if you looked up the history of this particular wine, but I think it did actually go for quite a bit of money at auction, once WineBid was up and rolling, which, started obviously before the wine was released. But I just kind of wonder, I wanted to look at the history just for fun, just to see what happened.
So it's been up and down. It's really for the longest time hovered around that $60 to $75 range. And you have to go back like a long time, I think, if you wanted to see it go above that. Like back in 2010, it was at like $100 at one point. But even that seemed to sort of be an outlier. When you go back further, it was going at the, you got to go back to like 07 and further, and you see it going at the $90, $100 range at times, but it's just sort of steadily sort of come down a bit.
Yeah, it's come down. Actually, I looked up for fun. It looks like in 07, a bottle went for 135. So I think that was the highest per bottle price that it ever sold for. So anyway.
2018, Carlisle Limerick Lane. We had a ton of Carlisle.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Carlisle. I mean, it's kind of consistent, but there's a bunch of it again this week.
We had 2018. This is another one we had a bunch coming to auction. I saw this 2018 Linmar Estate Russian River Valley Chardonnay.
Lots of killer deals for Linmar. I mean, that stuff is expensive. It's a serious Sonoma Coast producer and a lot of single vineyard Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and it's cheap at the auction. And they all, I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of these already have bids.
I think some of those might be from me. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I bid on some of that Linmar because I was like, I love Russian River. I know you don't like American Chardonnay, but I love Russian River.
No, it's good. Their wines are great. They're really, really good. And yeah, $26 now. Well, obviously it's got a bid. Quail Hill Chardonnay 18. The Block 10 Pinot Noir 2019 is 31. I mean, they've all got to be at least twice those reserve prices at the winery for sure. But yeah, there's a bunch of deals. The La Serenité Chardonnay 18 is at 30. Monastery Chardonnay 18 is at 35. Monastery Pinot Noir 18 at 35. I mean, those are great deals.
2018 Antiquatera.
Now that's not such a great deal.
I was like, $390 for a Oregon Pinot Noir?
Yeah, I mean, this producer has gotten so popular in the last couple of years. It's a really big deal. I remember we talked about, wasn't there a full case or 10 bottles of the 2009 or 2008 or something? And they were relatively inexpensive, right, when they went up.
This bottle last sold in August for $401 and $415. And then before that,
wow,
it sold in May for $175. So between May and August,
wow.
It more than doubled in price.
Really? So wow, just since last year. That's crazy. That's a lot.
And there was a bunch of Antiquatera coming to auction this week.
Yeah, there's a Serras and Oberlin Pinot Noir, which are slightly, more reasonable, but I don't know the deal if that's younger vine fruit or if those are newer, vineyards for them or if they're blends or something. I have no idea.
We had 2018 Sojourn Cellars.
It's a lot of
Sojourn coming up. Though I picked out this one because this is, $40 seems like a really good price, especially when you consider this bottle seems to retail for over $100. So we've got a lot of Sojourn coming into auction this week at great prices.
And I think with that much, at auction right now, it's pretty safe to assume you could secure a lot of those at or very close to the reserve price. So
absolutely. We have a 2013 Lynn Colodo because that one spoke to me because, as you know, I'm perfection in every way. I'm perfect. So that one, $55. I love Rhone blends, right? This is
Yeah, no, this I have a kind of, it's funny because this wine's not really what I would consider to be sort of like the style of wine to which I gravitate towards, but it's a really cool winery if you've ever been there in Paso Robles, and they have a beautiful tasting room. It's a really beautiful property, and they're really nice people, and the wines are very strong. So if you go there and you taste, 6 or 7 glasses of wine and you are finally hammered. But yeah, it's intense. This is not a shy, sort of understated, cool climate, as it were, balanced wine. Well, I'm not going to say it's out of balance, but it's a powerful wine, or most of their wines are powerful too. They make a Cabernet actually, which is interesting because it's not really in the same style as a lot of the Rhone blend. I actually like their Rhone reds quite a bit better, but anyway,
I saw this. I'm a fan of the Rhone Rangers. And I was like, I really wanted to mention this one because I think $55 is a good deal.
Yeah.
Especially for something like that. There was a 2015 Relic Paras Vineyard Grenache.
Yeah. A last bit of Relic popped up after that.
The last bit of Relic popped up. And I love Grenache. $40 seemed like a pretty good deal, deal to me for that.
Some of my favorite kind of sneaky Grenache, speaking of Grenache, there's Jaffer's 2010, both the Grenache at 25, which is a steal, and the Thompson Vineyard Syrah it's now at 31. It's got a bid, but it's a great sort of eternally sort of underappreciated producer. And there's a couple in right now I wanted to mention while we're speaking Central Coast Syrah and Grenache.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look at that, Jeff.
Yeah, and you know what? Moving back to Pinot Noir, if you don't mind, I'll list a few because I do have quite a few picks. But there's a couple bottles of Chasseur, which I don't believe the label exists anymore. I think I've said this in the past and I was wrong, but I don't think Chasseur is around. There's a Sonoma Coast 09 at 35. Again, these are steals, the great wines. 08 Umino Pinot Noir at 40. There's a couple of magnums of Cobb, which you rarely see. We do see them. They do come up at auction fairly often, but it's a very almost cult following Sonoma Coast producer. Anyway, Coastlands Vineyard mag at 90 for the 07 and another mag at 90 for the 2010. And then there's an 06 750 milliliter of the Rice Spivak Vineyard at 55. Those were kind of cool. And then there's a bunch of Duke's family vineyards, which I'd never heard of before.
Yeah, I saw those.
But they all have bids. So somebody knows what they are because they all have bids.
It's Duke's mom. She's very proud of him. Anything else on the US side?
Yeah, no, there's quite a few more. If you give me a second here.
Go for it.
There's a Magnum of Crocker Star Cabernet Franc, which I thought was cool. It's from 08, so it's got a nice bit of time on it. It's at 120. They make a really, really good wine called Stone Place Cuvée, and the Cabernet Franc that they make is also excellent. So I thought that wasn't too bad. There's some back down to Central Coast. There's some Denner Dirt Worshipper. There's there's 2 of the 14s they're at 41. They've got bids. And also Ditch Digger at 41. I think on release now, that stuff is like $70 from the winery. There's a 13 Drinkward Péchon Entre Deux Mers, which is kind of a joke title, not a joke, but it's a pun. Between two seas in France, Entre Deux Mers. It's actually an appellation in France, but it's 2 mothers, Françoise Péchon and I can't remember Miss Drinkward's first name. But anyway, great Cabernet. We actually had a mag we opened for a tasting up at Napa not too long ago, and it was really, really good. So there's a 13 at 75, which I think is far less than what it costs on the mailing list. There's also a couple bottles of Keplinger Eldorado, which we've seen Keplinger pop up from time to time. It's to 2020. Well, they both got bids actually at 51. That kind of caught my eye because I'm not super familiar with the label. I have seen it, but not too well known. 07 Ladera Cabernet Mag, which I thought was a good deal at 85. That winery, I think it changed hands, and I don't believe it's being produced under the Ladera label anymore. So that was cool. 03 Jericho Canyon Red at 40. This was then taken over by Rudd. So I thought that was a good deal from a unsung Napa vintage. And let's see. Oh yeah, Peter Michael Cuvée Indigène 15. 2 of those at 135. That's really, really good Chardonnay. You say I don't like Chardonnay from California, you're wrong. I love Peter Michael. It's great. And the Cuvée Indigène is one of the best ones they make. I think next to Point Rouge, it's like way up there. Oh, there's a bunch of Soder. I don't know if you saw the Soder wines, but there's a whole bunch of interesting Oregon Pinot Noir that's far less than the Antica Terra wines we mentioned earlier. There's some Soder. And then there is also a bunch of White Rose Estate. And I love these wines. They're really good. They don't get a lot of press or attention, but they're all in the 35 to 40 range. A few of them got bids, but there's a whole bunch of White Rose. Great stuff. 14, 15, 16 vintages, different vineyards. And let's see. Then Stephen and Walker Trust Winery, which I'd never heard of.
I saw that.
Where did those come from? I'd never, ever heard of that before.
I saw that and I was like, I see that stuff and I almost want to buy it, just give it a shot and see
It's so bizarre because the Pinot Noir is cheaper than the Petite Syrah Magnums. Did you notice this? It's like,
yes.
There's Dry Creek Petite Syrah Mags for 90 and 70. And then there's 3 vintages of the Pinot Noir for 55. Well, they all have bids, actually. They're all at 56 now. So somebody's going after those. And then there's a limited Cabernet at 76 has got a bid, and then Coombsville Cab at 65 for the 750. So anyway, that was another winery that popped out I'd never heard of before. And MTR Productions, that was another wine that I'd never heard of. Kind of caught my eye because it was fairly expensive for something I'd never heard of. 2013 MTR Productions Memory Found Syrah. It's at 75. So that's another thing I wanted to look up just because I'd never seen it. Oh, and I think, Jeff, some of your friends are members of the Napa Valley Reserve. There's a Magnum of the 08 in for 440, which, that's like cheap Harlan. It's not the same wine. It's not from his vineyards in Oakville, but it's on the other side of the highway in Napa. And anyway, there's a Mag of the 08 for 440 in case you're interested.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this episode of Finally Hammered. We're all the way through the United States, and check back for additional episodes this week and in the future. And happy bidding. Cheers.
Cheers.